Right, so hello everybody. My name is Arif Masood Mirza. I'm the Regional Head of Policy for ACCA across the MISA region. I'm delighted to have with us today a fellow member of ACCA, Chaminda Kumara Siri. Chaminda, welcome and thank you very much for broadcasting this presentation today.
My pleasure.
So today's presentation is titled The Role of Accounting Professionals Amidst COVID-19 Outbreak. And I'm sure a lot of you across the region are either in lockdown and you're working from home, and a lot of you will be concerned about how your businesses are going to function sustainably in the future. So we're going to listen to Chaminda in a moment. Let me introduce Chaminda. Chaminda is a senior management consultant, a corporate trainer, and an international speaker with more than 2 decades of experience in the corporate world, where he's holding senior leadership positions. As a trainer and lecturer, he's inspired over 50,000 individuals over the years. So we're very delighted to have Chaminda inspire us, and there's about 110 people listening online now. Chaminda is a governing council member of ICASL, the Institute of Chartered Accountants Sri Lanka, and he serves on the international panel on accounting education at the International Federation of Accountants, IFAC. He also sits on several boards and strategic committees, both in the private and state sector. So we're very lucky, we're very privileged to have Chaminda with us today. Chaminda, let me hand over to you to take the audience through your presentation. Over to you, Chaminda.
Thank you, Arif. Hi. Thank you, Arif, and good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you are in the globe. First of all, let me thank ACCA for giving me this opportunity to talk to our fellow accounting professionals. Before I start my session, I hope all your family members are safe during this difficult time. In case any of your family members or remotely connected relatives are affected in some way, I wish them speedy recovery. Right, let me start with the current context. Before I talk about the global, let me show you this picture. So accounting professionals are known as coronas, right? So the coronas are attacked by corona now, because the word corona, you know what it means is it's all about postmortems. We have been labeled in the past as people who are doing postmortems. Now, those who are just sticking to the postmortems, number crunching, just do what you're supposed to do, just take numbers into account when you do things. So all these old coronas are going to be vanished with the corona, because it has given us a new light, new way of thinking, and a new world. So I'm going to be talking about that in a little while. So the first point I want to raise before I start is, it's time for us accountants, if we are still sticking to our past, our historical role, our double entry number crunching role, this is the time that we have to forget that and rethink ourselves when the entire world is redesigning itself. Right, let me start with a few thoughts on the international or the global context. So we are going through the biggest lockdown in the history of the world as per experts. So people are trying to compare this with various other incidents that took place in the past. But I would say this is a different challenge that we all are going through. I have seen in certain cases, some people are trying to relate the current crisis to global financial crisis we faced in 2008 and compare in terms of magnitude. But I would say these two are two different scenarios. You cannot compare global financial crises with this one, even though we can say the magnitude of financial impact is higher here. Because there's a clear differentiation between the two. The differentiation is what we saw in global financial crisis was a financial consideration or economic issue. Because of that reason, the entire world has to suffer, and there were precautions that you could take from economic point of view. However, in the current context, we are going through a health crisis throughout the world. So as a consequence of the health crisis, we are facing the financial crisis. So however much we brainstorm, however much we talk about this policy framework or financial strategies, we cannot make them a reality until we tackle this health issue. Therefore, we all are dependent on the health matter. Somebody has to fix the health issue for us to kickstart our work. So that is the difference between the 2008 situation and current situation, because we have to depend on the health crisis. Until that is sorted, we can't execute our things. Of course, there are different ways we can handle. We'll discuss about that. So this quote that I have put on my slide, right? The chief executive of IMF, George Weah, is saying, never in the history of IMF have we witnessed the world economy come to a standstill. So this is a very alarming statement. As you can see, the entire world is coming to a standstill. It's not an easy task, given that we are working in the global village. Even we have dependencies, right? Let me give you a few points that I have been able to gather. Most of these things might be in the public domain, as you know, but just to get an idea about the issue that we are facing. So few points they say, with the pandemic spreading out, there is a shift of wealth from vulnerable countries to other countries. So one of the interesting things that we have seen with this outbreak is that there are a lot of developed nations that are getting affected heavily. So most of the investors who are in those areas are reconsidering their investments. And we can see even in the Chinese case, people see that China is recovering from what it was, but still the signals it has given was not that great. So you must have seen countries like Japan is now trying to completely withdraw from those countries. And most of the big players are now rethinking their supply chains and revisiting. However, they're still heavily dependent on this Chinese geography, because still today, China is the biggest producer of components and inputs for the world. So we also have seen an impact on our work. That is, the employees cannot work. So the ILO has said that during Q2 alone, there's a 6.7% of working hours wiped out, which is equivalent to around 195 million full-time workers. It's a lot. A lot of work has been stopped, right? And also, during this time, IMF has allocated 1 trillion worth of funds for the countries to combat with it. However, they emphasize that these funds should be directed mostly to handle the health crisis, to take care of the health expenses, which means these funds will not entirely come for economic revival. So most of the countries will still have to depend on your local strategies and other means in reviving your economies. And we will discuss some of these trends in a while so that we can take care of them in terms of economy at large. And then today's session is mostly focused on the accounting professionals. Let me come back to this accounting professionals role gradually there. Right. So this pandemic also gives us another perspective. That is, historically, we used to call these kind of rare occurrences as black swan events. Right? Now, this pandemic is happening after several other incidents throughout the world. So we have been used to these kind of surprises. For example, even in the Sri Lankan context, we had the Easter Day attack last year, and I'm sure each of your countries had different disruptions at different points, which means we cannot anymore consider these kind of disruptions as surprises. We cannot consider them as black swans anymore. In today's context, we talk about the VUCA world, right? In this VUCA world, uncertainty is given. So may you be a CEO, you can be an accountant, you can be an entrepreneur, whoever you are, if you exclude this uncertainty in whatever you do, you're not doing any business. You're not living in the current world, right? That's why it's a extraordinary becomes ordinary in today's context. So you have to be prepared to handle that. If you are not prepared, you're exposed to the consequences. So that's why in today's context, we say expect the unexpected. And also I will touch a little bit on budgeting later. So one of the key areas that accountants are focusing on in terms of planning is how robust our budgeting process is, right? These concepts, traditional concepts. So at larger level, the concepts like global supply chains, competitive advantage, cost arbitrage, outsourcing. So we have all these big theories, concepts that paid off in terms of monetary terms when environment is stable. But these disruptions ask us to revisit all these concepts. And now we have to balance between the risk and cost. So we always went after what is cheaper, what is advantageous in terms of rupees and cents. Now we have to make a little bit of balance in between the risk versus cost. So are we getting to the lowest possible cost or the financial advantage without considering the risk, or should we consider both into account and decide where we want to operate? So even in terms of supply chains, most of the countries, I must recall, initially when this pandemic was there in China, there were certain sentiments going around. Countries must reduce their dominance, their exposure to China, and if you are not in China, you are safe. That was the initial sentiment. But we forgot the fact it is just a scenario, right? It is not necessarily China. If you say I am dependent on China, therefore I am at a risk. My competitor is dependent on India, that competitor is not at a risk. No, you can't say so, because it can happen to India as well. So the point here is that it's not about China, India, or America, anything. It's about how you have taken this entire picture and understand the vulnerability, and then you have to have some kind of risk management, risk mitigation structure in your organization. Identify your concentrations. If you are concentrating in any country, may it be supplies, may it be sales, right? It's time for us to look at all these formulas and correct them. So let me move. So this is the ideal quote for the today's context. So I like this quote very much. So I'm using this very much these days with whatever the interaction I have. So Winston Churchill, a great leader, has once said, never let the group crisis go to waste. So this gives us a lot of insights. Let me just take a few things that we can focus on. As financial professionals, how do we see this crisis? So before we look at this crisis, let me also give you another perspective to this. That is, when we are in crisis, most of the people first go to a distress mode. That is, you get upset, you get distressed, you get locked up in your mind before you do anything else. So we feel helpless. We look out for options. We look out for help. We wait till someone else comes and help you. So all this happens. So the first and foremost, for example, we are not just managing ourselves. We are professionals helping out other organizations. We are professionals helping out our own clients. We are professionals guiding the general public. So we should not think the same way that an ordinary person thinks. If that is the case, there's no difference between us and an ordinary person, because we are professionals who are well above the ordinary. So they will come to us for guidance. So you should be able to guide them. If you are upset, you can't do that. So the first thing we must do when we face a crisis, we must make a self-assessment about ourselves and make sure we are mentally fit and ready to absorb the reality. Because I myself have seen several accounting professionals that I had to engage with in organizations. They are in crisis. They are upset. They are distressed. They take panic decisions. So don't do that, because you are trying to control yourself and you are trying to help someone else. The first thing is to get your mental state right. So you can practice some of these mindfulness techniques. You can practice some of your religious aspects that you have, whatever the religion you belong to. Make sure your mind is calm. If your mind is turbulent, you cannot handle a crisis. Second point is, don't use the word crisis in any of your communications. Don't use the word crisis in any of your documents, because the word crisis doesn't give you any energy. It only gives you disturbance. It is a negative word. So all what I say is, rename the word crisis to challenge, because the word challenge gives you energy. The word challenge gives you options. The word challenge get you to work on something, because challenge is something that you are supposed to overcome. Therefore, to give the right mindset, first you get that idea and then spread that across your teams and organization. Whenever you talk about this situation, always use the word, we are facing a challenge. We want to come out of this challenge. Don't ever use the word crisis, right? Thirdly, when this kind of a difficult situation comes, everyone goes to backseat. Everyone is struggling. Everyone is looking for help. Everyone is clueless, and that's where the opportunity is, because the people who understand the reality and who sees the opportunity within the crisis will be the first to win the game. And in your case, you as accounting professionals now need to understand that you are an allied group of people in the society where people will come to get some advices. So it is your time to showcase your abilities and your fitness to support others and take out the country, businesses, and people out of this challenging situation. So we'll be discussing some of these points as we go on. We'll see how we can capitalize on this. Right. Let me talk about a few trends in the meantime before I get into the nitty-gritties. So there'll be a huge drop in the luxury products as per the experts' views, because now people are trying to understand the true nature of life and their spending habits. They'll cut their discretionary expenditure at a large level. So if you are working or if you are supporting any client in this industry, it is time that they revisit their business models and look for other options to see how far they can minimize the damage. But there's an interesting finding as well, right? There has been a survey in China, and according to the survey, before the survey is done, there is this general understanding that the world is going to be a totally different world. People will behave differently. People will cut down their luxury expenditure. People will postpone their travel. So these are some of the sentiments that we see. But interestingly, this survey done in China has highlighted, people are still willing to go back to their previous lifestyle. They said it will be a couple of weeks, we want to get back to our normal lifestyle. We are not going to cut down our luxury or discretionary expenses. We want to still have it. And they say we want to have that break. We want to go out and we want to travel. So this Chinese community is contributing heavily for the tourism industry in the world, right? So one of the predictions I saw in the internet is that there's going to be a huge impact on the tourism industry because Chinese people are not going to travel. I think this survey is going to challenge some of these assumptions. They have said, no, we want to travel back. We want to come back. So interestingly, some of these assumptions that we make based on a logical point of view might not hold true in certain situations. So therefore, especially as professionals, when we take decisions, when we do our planning, just also keep in mind that there's another side to the coin. These are all rational, logical analysis that we do, but there's a reality as well that might be different. So that is something that we also need to realize during this crisis, because we do a lot of planning with tools, models, and different techniques, but most of the traditional, mechanical, logical concepts are being challenged in this current context, and we are expected to go to the ground reality and understand those and work according to the pulse of the ground reality. And that is something that we can take away as accounting professionals. We'll be discussing some of these things later. Next thing would be accelerated shift to digital shopping. In terms of consumer behavior, during the lockdown period, most of the countries are now encouraging online shopping because you can't now have physical customers into your place. Most of the businesses are transforming. Of course, to a certain extent, this is going to be a bubble because not everyone who is buying online in current context due to the lockdown situation will continue to do the same in future. However, there's going to be a relatively higher proportion of people who would do online shopping because of the experience that they get now. So therefore, there is a boost in that. We have to be mindful of that. Now, e-commerce is moving completely to mobile commerce now, right? So we will have to have a lot of options. Even as professionals, we should be able to cater to our clients using mobile, not only just a call. We need to invest in mobile applications, mobile platforms, etc., for us to deliver our services. And even the organizations are now expected to do, because in this digital world, we cannot expect customers and everyone to have a computer or a laptop, right? Mobile is the equipment that everyone is using. So we have to be mobile compatible in our tasks that we do going forward. So there's another interesting trend that I've seen. There's no touch alternate payment options. So what do you mean by this no touch alternate payment option? That is basically you are moving away from even credit card payments, right? So we are moving away from that, and we are expecting people to get into more online mobile-based payment options. There are enough platforms that are available, including Apple Pay, PayPal. Even Bitcoin is going to be a major player in the days to come. There was some prediction in 2019, right? Before 19, there'll be a shift around 50% from ordinary payment modes to online payment. Now in 2020, it's going to be even more with this trends taking place. So next, accelerated digital transformation. We were talking about digital transformation. We were talking about AI, robotic automation, all kinds of high-end technologies, and most of the organizations were reluctant to adapt to this. Most of the organizations were worried about the possible consequences. Most of the organizations were doing evaluation after evaluation before they get into that and the vulnerabilities. Now Corona has made it happen. So most of the organizations, the digital transformation has been made possible by Corona. That is one positive thing that Corona has done. So somebody I have seen in the internet, somebody has said there is another C to the C suit. who has enabled the digital transformation. It is not the CEO, not the CFO, not the Chief Technology Officer, it's Corona. Because that's the bitter truth, right? Most of the organizations were not prepared to transform themselves, but in the current context, we are compelled to transform. However, we see good results. So I must say, even in the state sector, we can see with much resistance, they are adapting to this. So this will advance the fourth industrial revolution. That is a very important thing we need to keep in mind. So we were talking about fourth industrial revolution, and we were expecting a wave to continue for a while to make things happen. Now, with this current context, this revolution is going to be much faster than what was anticipated before. That's an interesting move that we all have to be mindful of. There is no other way that we have to accelerate our digital transformation. Then another neglected area which was reminded by the pandemic is the climate emergency. So there were a lot of discussion around the world about the climate emergency, environmental protection, etc., carbon footprint. All these things were discussed in detail, but in very small scale, or maybe limited to certain forums, but not everyone was paying enough attention. Now, with the current happenings, there are a lot of attention to the environment and social concessions. So this attention is expected to continue after the pandemic also, and organizations will definitely invest on this. More than the organizations, the customers are going to pay a very high attention, right? They are going to put a very high weightage on this area when they purchase stuff from organization, and they will watch how organizations work in terms of environmental conservation and other stuff, right? This also has aroused the local pride. That is, I know in Sri Lankan context we see this I have seen in neighboring countries as well. A lot of people are now pushing for a self-sufficient economy. Reduce your dependency on other nations, other countries. Let us produce whatever possible within our country. So this kind of a trend is coming up now. So people are looking for import substitutes. People are looking for curtailment of imports. So they are looking for other avenues. Of course, these trends might not continue as at the speed that we expect, because there are a lot of infrastructural things that need to come in place, and also the geopolitical environment will also play a role in doing this, because there are countries dependent on other countries on various trade tie-ups and various political understandings. Therefore, however much there is local pressure from the population of the country to move forward, there will be certain restrictions. But the fact of the matter is, there is a possibility for a growth in the local industry. And this area, I must say, from accounting professionals' point of view, this area is going to be key in uplifting the SME sector. Because we all know in most of our countries, the SME sector play a pivotal role in the national economy, right? One of the biggest threat for the SME sector was imports from other countries. They can't compete with the prices. Now with this, there'll be a lot of pressures to the government by this segment to restrict imports and support local industries. In that, even accounting professionals have a bigger role to play, because the accounting professionals' role in the SME sector is not just an accountant, because you are going to be an all-rounder for them. So you need to have end-to-end understanding to support this segment if you want to cater to this. Another trend that we all know is work from home, right? Work from home has become a reality. We have no option. Now this will reduce travel and related costs. Especially organizations will now rethink about the administrative premises Do we need to maintain such a large space to accommodate such a large crowd for administrative purposes? Can we have a portion of our employees working from home instead of coming to work? So these learnings will be continued for most of the organizations, and as accounting professionals you will also be expected to do cost benefit analysis of these decisions and challenging some of these conventional ways of doing work. And I have seen in certain cases some of the organizations have decided to relocate their premises from high cost cities to low cost cities, and some organizations have already started crafting their employee policies to have a certain portion of employees working from home and to start working on rotation. So these are new things that are going to be practiced heavily in the new normal. So we will all have to be prepared with our part of the story to contribute to that. Right. So then I'm coming to the accountant's role little by little. So there are a few roles I need to highlight before I get into the nitty-gritties. Rule number one, look after yourself to look after others. So that means take care of your health, take care of your mental stability, take precautions, take medicines to your mind as well, and make sure you are fit and proper to help others. That's number one. Rule number two, look after your employees before your clients, right? Before you look at your clients, before you look at your other people who will support you in whatever the sense, look after your employees, your teams first, because they are the people who take care of your clients and the rest of it. Third one, look after the health of clients before business. This is very important. We all are going through a difficult time. Everyone is equally affected. So it is very important to make sure that you take care of the relationship with your client and boost their mental stability before you talk business. So when you give a call to your client, the first thing you should be asking would be, how safe are their family members, and is there anything that you can do to support them in that sense? Maybe you can identify any gaps and support them. So that is the first thing before you talk about business. Focus on sustainability rather than reinstating. This is a very important statement as a business consultant or an accounting professional. Now, we are very much familiar with profit and revenue and all that, right? So we are looking at reinstating our balance sheet, reinstating your P&L. No, that should not be the case. This is my personal suggestion, right? Don't look at that. Why? Because when you talk about reinstating, you're talking about going back to where you were. As I told you at the beginning, the world after this pandemic is going to be a different world. So the businesses are going to work differently. Customers are going to behave differently. We will have different priorities. The businesses will have to run differently. So when you are going for a different world, you have to have a different business model. So when you look at a different business model, don't think about going back and reinstating what you had. Look at what is going to be the new normal after the pandemic, and then see how sustainable the current business model of the organization to face and continue in that new normal. So you have to now focus, before you look at what is the damage done by the pandemic to the organization, leave it as it is. Think about what is going to happen, what is going to be the future, how far the organization is ready and prepared, or if there's any gap to fill to get there. Sometimes you will realize that whatever you have lost may not be a major issue. For example, most of the organizations are now struggling with staff cost. Some organizations think twice, should we lay off staff or somehow carry the staff and pay the salary? So you have two options. Of course, you have to take these decisions very carefully when it comes to people. When you cut someone else's job, yes, there is a sensitive matter. Take care of it. Let me park that aside for the time being. But the point I am trying to make is, if an organization is going to lose 50% of the staff, your worry from organization point should not be the fact that you are losing staff. Your worry should be, if I cut it down to 50%, can I rebuild a business model that can sustain in the future? Maybe a technology is a solution. You can have technology in place of the lost staff. You can still make a viable business model for future. So that's why I told you, don't talk about reinstating, talk about how you build your business to the future. Focus on relationship rather than returns. That is very important at this point in time. If you are a consultant, if you are helping a client, if you are running a firm, don't worry about your money at this point in time, because everyone is struggling. You have to build good relationship with people. Help them when they are in need. When you help them when they are in need, they will definitely pay back for you, right? So you now need to handhold them, do your bit, how far you can support them to stand out, right? And then build that rapport with them. That will make sure you lock them up with you rather than you just make a business out of the current crisis. Then it's going to be a temporary thing. So the most important line, we talk about things that are not permanent, right? We say nothing is permanent. So is a crisis. So is a pandemic. So is Corona. Therefore, it's just a matter of time. Don't think that this is going to be eternal. So it has to change at some point. All what we need is to have our equipment, tools, thinking, mindset ready for us to face the current situation first, and then to rebuild where we want to go. Then I'll give you a few tips for you to handle the businesses. So it is said that 80% of the business leaders suggest significant downturn in expected revenues and profit year on year. This I have extracted from an ACCA survey. They have interviewed about 10,000 professionals on this. You can access this from ACCA Global. These are some of the insights I have extracted from it. 50% of the employee productivity negatively affected. Of course, 37% said cash flow problem. 25% to defer launch or new product or services. 25% customers stop or reduce purchase. 53% of the organization have been able to do financial focus. So this is very important. Despite all this, only 53% of the organizations have been able to do a financial reforecast. So now you see where the gap is, where the competency of prediction, right, by professionals are lacking. We are very much used to the historical trends and extrapolating from history. So we are very weak in projecting the future in uncertain times. These are some of the skills that we will have to build within ourselves. So I'll give you a few tips for you to help businesses, especially the SMEs and your clients these days. As I told you, when people are going through a difficult time, one of the key roles that is coming up as accounting professional is our role as a trusted advisor. Organizations will come to us because we are a professional, because we don't take decisions based on gut feeling, because they believe we have better understanding of the things, because they believe we are experts to advise them. So this role is coming up. So one of the things that we need to do now, so most of the people are worried about losing our job. Most of the people are worried about losing our business, right? Most of the people are worried about losing our status quo in the market. No, this is a golden opportunity for us to showcase our trusted advisor role. But for that, we must be prepared to respond, right? So they are looking up to you. So what you need to have? You need to have up-to-date, accurate financial information as much as possible. So I know getting information is a difficult task at this point, but try to collect as much as possible at this point in time, and then you become stronger in information. When I talk about information, it is not only about the information about your client or customers or P&L or transaction. What I mean, you need to be equipped with information about this pandemic, what is going on, what is happening in the global context. There are enough materials available in the internet about this pandemic, lot of analysis, expert views. You need to spend enough time in front of your computer now and get access to this information, build your own insight, summarize this, because some of these expert report cannot be comprehended by ordinary people. They can't understand. You are an expert who can read and understand this, summarize, simplifies, and then adapt to your context. So that is very important. People will look up to you for your information. Then updates about government initiatives. That is another area where we can play a pivotal role. Most of the governments have now declared their relief measures, and every other day you hear something coming out from the government. It can be a relief measure, or it can be some guideline, it can be some policy decision. So people are not keeping a tab on all these things. Sometimes there is information overload, and at the same time there's another thing happening now. The social media can misinterpret some of these things, right? So people get wrong impression about some of these things. So you are a professional, a trusted advisor. You can get hold of this information, interpret, and you can even go one step further, go and negotiate with government authorities and clarify things and talk on behalf of your clients and show your strength. Now this is a very good opportunity for you to establish, but you have to do your part in doing this. Next, help them get through this crisis and avoid shutting down. Another important thing. Most of the people, I myself have few clients of mine who have decided to shut down some of their operations because they can't handle it. Because one of the things that can happen during a crisis like this, as I told you, people tend to take emotional decisions. People can't understand what's going on. So they compare your current situation with what they used to be. So you need to show them future is not going to be the same as what it was. Probably what is happening may be a blessing for you to get into the future. So don't let them shut down immediately. You need to tell them the way how they can hold on during the crisis, during the difficult time. You have to find ways. I'll give you one example. When there is an option for you to pay the salary or reduce staff. If you pay the full salary, you can survive 3 months. If you reduce staff, you can survive 6 months. So now you have a decision at hand. So you need to be able to explain this to the client. You are having a cancer and you have a wound in your leg. Do you want to save the leg and die, or do you want to cut the leg and survive? So you need to be able to have that discussion with the customer. Look at the long term. As I told you, look at sustainability. You should be able to explain them and give guidance to be reassured about the future. That is very, very important. When people are going through negativity, somebody needs to come and give them confidence about the future. Because today it is done by the health professionals, right? Health professionals say, okay, we are trying to handle it. We are trying to handle it. We take measures, this and that. And government is talking. Most of the cases, government is talking as a political regime. Therefore, part of the people will not accept what the government say. But you, as a trusted advisor and a professional, can play a role here to spread positivity among the crowd and business community. You also can see a lot of negativities. That is fine. But you can find that silver line in the dark cloud and show them, of course, we are going through a difficult time, but you can do this. This is what the good things you can do. Most of the people say we have nothing to do, but I would say now you have time. All this time you were fighting to have time. We all were busy with many things. We didn't have time. Now you have time. Only thing is you can't deploy that time, but you can find enough ways to deploy your time. You can now take this time to do a comprehensive analysis, review of your business and plan for future. That is very important. And also guidance on how to best help their customers and stakeholders, right? You can help the businesses how they can take care of their stakeholders. Especially most of the businesses are now struggling to communicate and negotiate with some of the stakeholders, especially the government. When the government is throwing out their relief packages, there are certain areas that you as accounting professionals can put pressure. I know at institutional level this is happening, but at the same time, you can represent your customers and clients and give your views and help them. Another area that you can help these days is most of the people who are going after these government relief packages and various other options given by them. Some people don't even know how to write a letter. They don't have templates and formats, especially as I told you, most of these relief measures are targeted towards SME sector. This SME sector people are not that great in doing all these things. So you have a golden opportunity to intervene and support them. You can find enough ways to help them, and that will also open up new revenue models for you all as accounting professionals to get something out of this current situation. So dealing with bank, regulators, other stakeholders, that's what I told you. Corona affects coronas, right? If you are the same old number crunching accountant, you can't handle any of this. Now you have to roll up your sleeves. Don't stick to your guns, right? It's not only IFRS, double entry, financial reporting that you have. You have to now become a master of everything. You need to be able to deal with people. You need to improve your skills of negotiation. You need to improve your knowledge on regulations. You need to improve your ability to communicate with different stakeholders. You have time. You have enough resources. ACCA itself has enough learning materials. I am using most of these learning materials to improvise myself, right? Invest your time on these things. Communicate, communicate, communicate. I have put it thrice. Why? First thing, you have to communicate what is happening to everyone. I'll give you one example. It is very important. These days, most of the organizations are now detached from their employees, right? Some employees can't even remember what they were doing in their organizations. Now, once the lockdown is over, it is going to be a shock for most of the people to come back and adjust to their environment and their organizations. It is very important during this period to have some kind of a communication with your employees and staff so that you maintain the link between the organization and the staff. So their loyalty, their connection to the organization still remains. So you communicate truth, communicate what is happening so that they are not missing out of the information what is going on in the organization. And also you have to spread positivity. That is also part of communication. I'm telling this not only as a professional here, as a human. We all have some kind of religions that we believe. We all learn that when you spread positivity, positive things will happen, right? If you just live in negativity, we are only feeding negative energy to all around us. So we need to always do that and create that, because there's a difference between what you do and what an ordinary person do. When you as a professional go and tell people, I can feel that the economy is going to be all right. I can feel businesses are not going to be disrupted that much, right? When you talk about this kind of statement as a professional, people tend to believe it. So that creates confidence in them. So you have a role to do that. Be your client's best source of information. I told you, you're going to be the single source of information for your client. They will come to you for almost everything. Now, you should have the ability to accommodate. Now, some of my clients these days call me in the midnight. Sometimes they talk not only about their business, sometimes they talk about their personal issues, their stress factors, right? Let them talk, because now you are the trusted advisor to them. You are the savior, you are the master. So you have to play a role beyond a professional, somewhat like a father. You have a fatherly role to your clients and your other people who is coming to you. So do that role. It's going to pay you off without any doubt. Right. So I'm going to give you something a little technical here, but a model, right? So when you go through a difficult time, you have to look at how you go through this and then how you come back. So there are three phases in my view in any difficult time or challenge or a crisis, what you call it. First thing is to navigate through the crisis. Second phase is the revival. Third phase would be the long term, right? So I have used the word revive and revitalize, because revival is about bouncing back and managing the current difficult situation. Revitalize is all about giving a new energy, new birth to your business or your life, right? That is very important when you want to bring about that change, right? Let me go. So during this time, there are 4 key areas you need to focus on. That is, not only you need to advocate your clients also the same. First, employee protection, because health is number one. Make sure that your employees are properly safeguarded. You have given them enough guidelines. Your policies, if there are policies in the organization that block facilitating employees, you need to revise them. Encourage them to accommodate the current requirement. Then help your clients, and this is important for you as well, manage stakeholders. When you manage stakeholders, you have your suppliers, you have your customers, and you have other people. Remember, you may be having a supplier for you, right? Of course, you can't pay your dues, but it's always good to give a call and build that relationship and tell them, look, here, this my situation is, right? Always talk to customers, not to collect money. Talk to customers and let them know that you are taking care of them, you are worried about them, you prioritize the current need at this point in time. It's very important to have that rapport and manage the stakeholders during this time. Thirdly, supply chain. In the global context, the biggest disruption has taken place for most of the organization is due to the blockage in the supply chain. Especially, as I told you, the China lockdown, most of the countries got affected. Now with the current situation, there is another wave of disruption in the supply chain. So it is time for you to currently look at your supply chain to run whatever the capacity that you are running and revisit the gaps and maybe remodel your supply chain currently. For example, now locally, most of the businesses, now people can't go out from the house. So you have started delivering to doorsteps. So same kind of mechanisms need to be looked at from the supply chain side for you to now source your requirement depending on the situation. Finally, cash. In today's context, the most important item that we need to manage financially is cash. It's not the profit, it's not the revenue, it's the cash, because cash is the lifeblood of an organization. We must focus on that, and we must help our clients to do cash flows, predictions, and also strategies to advance cash coming in and strategies to push cash going out. So we have to now play a role here to help our clients to prioritize your cash management options. That is the immediate term. Then you go to the future focus. Future focus, when you revitalize, you need to look at scenario planning. Why scenario planning? No one knows, right? Still no one knows what's going to happen. We still don't know when the pandemic is going to be over. So we will have to define different scenarios. What if this happens? What if that happens, right? So more the scenarios, better it is. So in each of the scenarios, where we are going to end up and what would be the resource base that we need to have. So this is where we need to strengthen our budgeting in this line. Then building resilience. So resilience is how fast you get back. So you cannot say that after we come out of this pandemic, that's the end of it. No. People are talking about a second wave, and this has already opened our eyes the need to prepare for similar disruption in future. So to build that resilience in organization, both in terms of resources and in terms of skills of your people. Then your revival agenda. So now you need to focus, how are you going to revive for the future new normal? Are you going to continue the same business, of course, with a new model, or are you going to shift your focus to a different market segment or different business? And I am proposing the same to you as well as professionals, right? If you have been running an audit firm, if you have been running a consultancy firm, if you have been doing anything, if you have been doing a job in an organization, so now you also need to revisit your career future. Am I going to continue with this, or am I looking at something else? Especially, I'm telling you, for those employed people, you need to now think of alternative sources of revenue, right? Don't depend on a single source of revenue. Look at least some portion of your income to come from something else. So these are all revival strategies that look at organizational level as well as at individual level. Then reimagination and reform the new normal. So don't wait till the world to create the normal, right? Don't wait the environment to create that. You create it. You can create what the new normal could be. You can drive certain trends in the market. You can get people to come on board on certain changes. So now I like very much this statement by Steve Jobs, right? The great entrepreneur of Apple. When he introduced iPad, he said, nobody asked for an iPad from me because people don't know that that kind of equipment can exist. So I created it and I created a need for it for people to buy it. And I'm suggesting the same for you. You can be the traditional accountant that people used to come, but you now can show them you're more than a number crunching accountant. You can deliver something more. You can deliver your services differently. Define that and get that executed when the new normal is ready. Of course, without forgetting the fact that you're focusing on cost versus risk. I told you earlier, always balance cost versus risk. Don't always look at the least cost option or the highest profits option, forgetting the risk. Now it's time for us to pay a little more attention on the risk element and balance the two where you want to play. Right. I'll quickly run through this slide and then I have a few more slides if time permits, but anyway, I'll just try to wrap up with a few more thoughts and then I'll take up some of the questions we have because I need to entertain some of them as well. Okay. When you plan in uncertainty, don't think it is always negative, right? Uncertainty is not always negative. Uncertainty is where you have the opportunity because uncertainty leaves people to think. If everything is certain, everyone can see the thing, everyone can go for it. Then there's no winning. When there's uncertainty, those who are capable of predicting the future more accurately will win. So it's very important that you start learning how to play in uncertainty. It brings opportunity, as I told you, right? So these traditional approaches will not help. So we have these traditional models that say what is most likely to happen, because these instances are proving us you cannot simply assume what is going to happen. Instead, you have to think what has already happened that will create the future. So what has happened has happened. What are the new trends in the market? So those trends, how you capitalize from your side, as I explained earlier, right? So now you need to look at non-predictive forms of planning without getting yourself locked up in these models, computers, linear regression model, all that. Look at various options that we can bring in, especially the qualitative elements into your planning. So see this example I showed some times ago. McKinsey has made a prediction about the wireless subscriber growth. Now, as you can see this round, right? When they were doing this in 1985, they predicted by 2001 the mobile subscribers to be less than 20 million, right? You can see it's very low. But you see the curve, the actual number of subscribers. That's where the world went. So same thing can happen now. So I am not undermining the experts' predictions or these models, but we have to understand the reality. These incidents, these black swan events are proving us that our traditional planning tools are not going to work the way it was. We have to be dynamic and realistic in our predictions and our analysis. Right. So I'm not investing time here to explain this, but I just want to highlight the fact that we need to now deal with this fourth level, right? So level 1 is clear. Level 2, you have alternative futures. Level 3, you have range of futures. Level 4, this is the real uncertainty. You cannot say which direction you are going to go, right? Sorry, there was a disturbance. No problem, right? So these are the intelligences you need to have. Contextual intelligence, we also call it ripple intelligence. I'll show you a picture later. That is your ability to see the big picture and the connectivity. Moral intelligence, how you are able to handle your mental stability and deploy the required mental status, that is emotional intelligence, which is somewhat connected there. Moral is more in terms of ethics, right? Social and emotional intelligence, how you deal with others, with your emotions. Generative intelligence is where your ability to generate new ideas, innovations to make the transformation happen. And technological intelligence is about your ability to absorb the technologies faster and deploy them for the advantage. And we also need to look at remote leadership, because today we have to manage our teams from home. Unlike those days, we don't see them. We need to master that leadership skills. We need to master the work from home, and we also need to master paperless work, because today's context demand us to work paperless because we don't deal with people anymore. So we should be able to develop these models going forward. This will be the new normal. Right. This is what I explained earlier, the ripple intelligence. That is, as a ripple, when something happens somewhere, it goes as a ripple. So when pandemic happens in China, we should be able to figure out that it will hit us at some point. If you don't understand that connectivity, you are not managing your business. That's the simple logic behind ripple intelligence. Right. I'll quickly go down to this all we discussed. Right. Planning. You have to now come back to zero-based budgeting. I think most of you all know what zero-based budgeting is. And you also need to plan for a change of plans. And inclusive data gathering is very important. That is where you make everyone included in your data gathering exercise. Don't limit yourself. You get people from different departments, different functions to come and support you in data gathering, because they bring in different perspectives to the table. So venturing to overseas markets is that basically if you are a locally affected organization, you can suggest your organization to look at outside the world, because we can't forget the globalization 100%. We have to have some dependency. Look at those markets. Focus on core competencies. When you divert some of your segment, outsource, don't leave your core competencies out, keep it. And grow technical capabilities. And there's a finding as well, as you can see, the companies with greater technical capabilities can grow faster. So finally, there are some accounting considerations we need to pay attention to. Today, this is not a technical session, therefore I'm not intending to go through any of these, but I will refer you to some of these things. IFAC has a website. In there's a reference area with these accounting guidelines. ACCA has in the reference area where they have their guidelines. And also here I have summarized, there is a guideline from CA Sri Lanka. If anyone is interested, there's a document with detailed guidelines. I can share that with you all. It's available online as well. So key areas would be impairment. You need to be prepared with that. Government assistance, especially banks and businesses, because government assistance can be in two forms. Some can be grants, some can be loans. Going concern, especially going concern, disclosure requirement will be more in the current requirement. So you should be able to assist your organization to prepare for it, and you need to be prepared with the tools and techniques to do this. Interim reporting can be different, because most of the regulators have also released the pronouncements, stock exchange change in the reporting timelines and the requirements. So you need to be able to grasp them and prepare for it. And subsequent even reporting and deferred tax. These are some of the key areas in the reporting area that can have an impact. So do a self-assessment, help the entities to do a health check, regular communication with stakeholders, support business to assess the impact, show leadership, right? So very important to show your leadership, spreading positivity. Stand ready to assist anyone anywhere. Don't limit to your client or anyone. You need to go up and show yourself. As accountants, we are ready to support anyone, anywhere. We have to show that. Fourth industrial revolution become a reality, as I told you. Adopt, innovate, and nurture strategic thinking. That is going to be the key to survive and build agility in your organizations. So I think this material is shared. Therefore, these 10 takeaways is also there, so you can read it literally. So this is the final thought I'm leaving with you before I take up the questions. It is not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. This is a very old statement, but timeless. We can see the value today. Okay. Thank you very much for listening. I'm not sure how far it was effective in a seminar like this, unlike personal interaction. But I hope you gathered something. My material is available for you. And let me quickly go through some of the questions before I conclude. Arif, would you like to add something or help me with some of your thoughts before I take up any questions?
Yes, thank you very much, Chaminda. Tremendous presentation from you, taking us through step by step, your recommendations and your experiences, very valuable. I think, before we turn to the questions, one or two things I wanted to pick up with you on. You talked a lot about changing behaviors, changing our own behaviors, trying to ensure that we can cope with that VUCA world that you talked about, and how we can avoid being reactive. So how can we, I'm a very senior accountant, I'm senior in age, but young people are automatically, reactive. They can be emotional. What is your recommendation? How can we change ourselves? How can we change our behaviors very quickly so that we can respond in a responsible way? What do we need to do?
So let me, in the interest of time, let me give you one quick tip, because I use this when I talk about this leadership change and all that. There are two words, react and respond, right? So we should not react. That's my point. Yeah. Don't react. React is, if there's an action, your instant response is called reaction, right? If someone hits you, you hit back. That is reaction. We should not react. We should respond. What is the difference between react and respond? Response is, you see the world, you see the stimulus, you take it, analyze it, and then you plan what is your course of action. Sometimes your course of action may not be direct reaction. I will not hit you back. I'll absorb what you say. I'll process it. I know how to respond. I'll keep it, and later I will use it. So the point here is that first thing, when you see something, don't be judgmental, right? Don't be judgmental. So we tend to take things into our head without pre-conclusion, right? So crisis is negative. We lost our employees, negative. I lost my salary, negative. Don't take that. Just take the reality, and then you look at the possibilities, right? What are the possibilities? These possibilities, sometimes you might not be able to comprehend by yourself. That is why it is important for you to discuss with your colleagues. Don't take decisions in isolation, especially during a time like this. Even within the family, I have instructed people, whoever I interact with, even within the family, don't take single decision. Discuss with your family, because we are in a different emotional state now, right? That is my immediate answer to this. But it's a long answer I can give, but in the interest of time, first thing is, don't react, plan and respond. Second thing is, don't take decisions by yourself. Discuss. Even if your wife doesn't understand your language, your terminology, discuss, because there may be another side that you miss.
Great, that's fantastic advice, Chaminda. So discuss, consult people. You have a network of people, friends, family. You can discuss with them, and within the professional context, you have your professional network as well, don't you, Chaminda?
Exactly. And at the same time, that's what I'm saying. So this is a good time for our accountants to go and show their ability to support people, right? You open up yourself and let people come to you. So you are the trusted advisor. That's why I highlighted that fact, trusted advisor. You can play a bigger role here.
Yes, so trusted advisor means the ability to attract people to yourself so that they can trust the advice that you give them. Another question I wanted to pick up with you, Chaminda, is around the ESG, sustainability, environmental, social governance. You mentioned that when this ends, we should look at the world in a sustainable way. When you look at the corporate governance structure that we have today, how do you think, will there need to be governance changes that we make at the board level? Do we need to bring on people with other points of view to ensure that the board is able to transform itself?
Yeah, of course, of course. This is another area we advocate these days, even for our clients. So now most of the cases, what happens is when you run a business, you have a very narrow view of your business, right?
Yeah.
This ESG focus is very limited in most of the cases. To be honest with you, most of the organization, except there are few organizations who are genuinely doing this, most of the organizations follow these ESG concepts just for marketing purpose, right? To target an award. How genuine are they in that? So that is why it's very important to bring in an external perspective. And sustainability is not a policy. Sustainability or ESG aspect, environment, sustainability should be your infrastructure. Right? It should be your core. You have to build everything on top of it. I'll give you one example. We have a national training institution in Sri Lanka. So I happen to be the consultant who developed the strategic plan for them. So we make sure that the sustainability is one of the modules in all their training programs. Or 100% of the training program, there is at least one module on sustainability to explain them the importance of it. So organizations also need to embed this in their culture, not as a policy or as a document. You are right. Now it's time for us to bring in that element into it right from the board level. We need radical changes in the governance structure.
Right. So there are a few questions and a few statements that the audience has entered. One of the questions is from Rohel Raj. He says, "Hello, sir. Whether this pandemic will the pandemic increase SMEs around the globe? And like our accountant colleagues, what do you suggest them to start changing their minds in order to transform from accountants to entrepreneurs?" So you mentioned there may be a need for more SMEs following the pandemic, and you needed accountants to have that entrepreneurial attitude as well. So can you expand a bit on that, Chaminda?
Yeah, I agree with that, because now not only that, I must say, if we have enough entrepreneurs in a country during a time like this, the country doesn't suffer much, because entrepreneurs are capable of managing challenges, right? Because what we need to distinguish between even SMEs, we need to distinguish between businessmen and entrepreneurs. Most of the SMEs are businessmen. They just do something, buying and selling or this thing. But entrepreneurs are different. Entrepreneurs have a different mindset. They have the ability to see the big picture. They have the ability to create a market if the market is supporting them, right? They have the innovative capacity. There are a lot of things I can talk about the entrepreneurs. They have the endurance to hang on, right? And also, I must tell from our people, accounting professionals, what I have seen, I don't know about much about other countries. I'm talking from my own experience. When you cater to this SME segment, you should have that mindset and ability to go down to their level and understand the ground realities and deal with it. You can't be a consultant or a accounting professional who go and talk about jargon, who go and talk about theories, right? As I told you earlier, our accounting professionals need to be all-rounders. If you go and consult an SME, because they expect you to fix everything they have, because they are not capable of handling other things. Second point is, there is unemployment in a lot of segments. Even in our country, we have after school, there are a lot of youth hanging around without a job. So most of these people expect government to provide jobs, but there's a capacity restriction there. So harnessing entrepreneurial capacity, right, is an immediate requirement, I would say, for all the countries, especially our part of the countries, to rise up, because then what happens is you are not only getting a person back to work, that person will create another few jobs, right? And that person will create market, because the problem is this: in today's context with the crisis, there's a drop in demand, there's a drop in supply, right? Once the crisis is over, there'll be a pickup on the demand side, but the supply side is stagnant. So there's going to be a huge crisis. The crisis, in my view, the real crisis is yet to come, because the supply side is somewhat stable now because you had some stock that was remaining and all that. But when the production is completely stopped during this time, there'll be a huge gap. So it is very important that we incentivize and induce people to get into production and entrepreneurship even at small scale during this lockdown period, so that they are ready to take off once the lockdown is over. I think the accounting professionals can do a lot in this.
Great, thank you, Chaminda. I'm just going through some of the questions and statements that people have made. I think there's a few comments from one of our audience members, Praveen Ruberu, who really, I think he picked up on that metaphor that you used about coroner. So he was saying, no, he doesn't agree with that metaphor. He believes that accountants deal with live records, live financial records. So therefore, how can they be coroners? But I think you used it in a metaphor sense, in the sense that, you know, the old.
What I meant was, if you have, because we have this mindset of accountants being coroners, that's a historical view that we had. If we are still in the same view, we are going to be outdated. So I agree with him. So today's context, we have no option but live with the current data. So if you are there, you are surviving.
Absolutely. And yeah. You know, Mr. Nabil Ibrahim also complimented you on your tremendous presentation. But he showed the new dynamics, so thank you very much for that, Chaminda, from Nabil. Clark Ahmed also commenting that, you know, one should take one's care of one's spirituality at this time, mental health, intellectual health, and I think you mentioned that in terms of, you know, taking care of your mental health at this time. Like you said earlier on, we may be under tremendous pressure, we may lose our jobs, or we may have to take salary cuts. So how do we cope with this sort of mental pressure, Chaminda?
No, as I told you, the easiest way to start here is that, what is the main risk in today's context? We have a virus. The biggest harm that can happen is you lose your life, right? So you start from there, right? So be happy that you are living. When a lot of people are losing their lives, you are living. So today, the main thing is to save your life. If you have a life, you can do anything else after that. That's number one. Number two, as I told you, everything that happens to you may not be positive in life, right? So don't take this as just the only thing that happened to you. You have had enough bad things in your life in the past, but you have bounced back, right? Life gives you difficult times. It is just to test you. So we can go with our different religious perspectives as well, right? When the life throws you difficult things, you have to be even more stronger. So when the going get tough, the tough gets going, right? So these are opportunities to test your inner strength. I think we have seen many people coming out of these disturbances much better than when they were performing in a normal circumstance, because we have an enormous capacity within us. We don't use it. So these are, for me, these are opportunities to test our inner strength, right? When one road is blocked, you have to look for another road. You can open another path. I think, as I told you earlier, we as professionals have a dual role to play. We have to manage ourselves and we have to guide others. So we have to be in a much stronger position than ordinary people to handle with this. So I suggest you to practice these concepts like mindfulness, because these things help us to see a problem as a problem and keep the problem out without getting into your mind. That's why I told you at the beginning, don't take the problem into your mind. Leave the problem outside. Keep your mind free. Look at it as a professional. Keep your emotions away, right? Keep your emotions away. Look logically.
So we're getting feedback from Rahel Raj. Thank you for a tremendous presentation. Praveen Ribera, excellent presentation, very practical as always. All the best. Very insightful from Lava Kassan. Very insightful session and gave different perspectives. Great. Recommend a book for emotional intelligence. Any books that you can recommend for emotional intelligence, Chaminda?
No, I think it's, let's not be this thing, but there are enough materials that you can refer. But I personally believe this is, when you say emotional intelligence, it's very simple. It's basically taking control of your emotions, right? So how you take control of your emotions? First thing, you need to be aware of what your emotions are, right? When you know what your emotions are, then it's easy for you to manage that. So you can do two things. You can talk to yourself and figure out those emotions. You can ask others about how you behave in different situations, and then
Great.
before you respond, take care of it. So if someone is interested, you can, I have given my contact details. You can always reach out to me. I can give you other tips and maybe some references.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, on that note, Chaminda, thank you very much for the presentation, for guiding us through this very sensitive period that we're all experiencing. We live in a, like you said, we live in an interconnected world. So, you know, we're all connected, and we're very grateful for your advice and building our capabilities. So, on behalf of all the audience, Chaminda, thank you very much. We hope to welcome you back again to these series of webinars we're conducting. All the audience members, thank you for your comments, your compliments. You will also get an indication of your CPD units that you will earn from this. And I'm just going to end the session now. Chaminda, great, thank you very much. And I'm just ending the session now. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. I won.